Al, can you
Al
try
is here.
talking again?
So it is 5:32. Call to order the study session for the city and county for the city of Cherry Hills Village. This is Tuesday, October 20th of 2020.
Yes, I can.
2020. Thanks. Thank you, Al. We have Al, Councilor Blum on Zoom, and also Emily Black. Okay, item number one on the study session is discussion regarding action minutes. Laura? Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'll just try to pop up a little bit. So good evening, Mayor and City Council. Our first discussion item tonight is regarding minutes and the format of minutes. Our current format is what I call long form, where it's pretty detailed but cleaned up, not verbatim, but is a good help to find historical information about the reasons behind the council decisions. Councilor Gallagher asked us to look into action minutes, switching to those now that we have all of our meetings streamed and recorded, video on our city website and YouTube. Action minutes are different from our current form of minutes in that they are much shorter, much briefer. The point of action minutes is really to describe what happened, not what was said. And so it's really limited to who was there, what the meeting was, what items were discussed, but not the actual discussion itself, just the motions and votes. For a public hearing, it's really who spoke and on what topic and whether it was for or against, pretty limited, very limited on council discussion. Not really anything on council reports, for example. So much more limited. We do have those video recordings. So if we wanted to find out why council made a certain decision, we have those to go back to for the historical record if we were to switch to action minutes. A lot of cities municipalities do use action minutes. And I did include some examples attached as exhibits to the staff memo. I also tried to kind of put together what action minutes might look like for one of our meetings, and that's in the staff memo exhibit as well, compared to our long form minutes, so you can see that it is quite abbreviated. Some other examples of different forms of minutes, there's sort of an in-between action minutes and long form minutes, which I call summary minutes. There are some pros, but I see some cons with those as well, in that because you're not including everything, but you are including some stuff, I see more potential for disagreement over what should be included in the minutes with summary minutes. With action minutes, it's pretty clear you're not including much of anything. With our current form of minutes, it's pretty clear you're including almost everything. And then the last is verbatim minutes, which is just basically a transcript, and less professional in my opinion, but we can certainly go that route if you guys choose. But that's just a quick and dirty overview. Another question staff would have if council decides to go for a different format of minutes is how that translates to our boards and commissions. They currently, we're streaming them through Zoom onto YouTube and the city website, but we don't have the benefit of the camera system working for those meetings, excuse me. So the public, if they're watching that Zoom meeting, and transferring to virtual meetings would change this a little bit, but currently with in-person meetings, the public watching those Zoom meetings are seeing like the PowerPoints and anyone that's on Zoom, but they don't see the faces of the board or commission the way that they do with city council. So those are some thoughts. With the action minutes, if council were to switch to action minutes, then we would, as a staff, in order to try to mitigate some of that loss of easy access to historical information on a particular topic, YouTube does have a transcript, and I did include some of those pages as an exhibit to the memo, so you can see that it's not very helpful in creating minutes, but if you wanted a word search, it might be helpful. Maybe not so much if it's a hard word to spell and they misspell it, but that's a potential mitigation for the action minutes. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilor, maybe Gallagher, since this is your, oh, you need your.
So Laura, what have you talked to other municipalities about this, and what have you received any feedback from them?
I didn't talk to anyone particularly. I just looked at everybody's websites and downloaded a lot of sets of minutes to see what everyone does. But I haven't actually talked to any other clerks about it in particular. I do remember a training I took years ago about how to take minutes, and the general consensus among the instructor and the other clerks was that action minutes are better because then the sort of the legal record of the minutes is just very cut and dry. It's just the motions and the votes, and there's no real discussion about what was said. You don't get into those arguments between people and over the years. But at the time, I really liked the historical aspect of the long form minutes, so we didn't really bring that up to the council as an option.
Yeah, that's the part I struggle with, is oftentimes our discussion will move, and it will move off topic, and it really won't get recorded because it's really what you actually did, not what you said. And that's my chief concern.
I tend to go back and look at minutes fairly often, and I suppose I could very easily pivot and go back and listen to or watch the video is now going to be the option if we were to move to action minutes. If I wanted to really see or hear, or in lieu of reading, I guess, who said what. So I think I could probably get my arms around it. I don't feel strongly, I guess, either way. We've talked about it in the past, and I think so long as we preserve the ability to pick up on the nuances of our meetings and who said what, and things that aren't put down into a set of action minutes, I'd be okay with it.
Councilor Brown.
Well, I appreciate that. I do have very strong feelings. I know we've discussed this, and that's probably not a surprise to anyone. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Laura. After all of these years, I find the minutes that you compile to be extraordinarily helpful. And I'll be honest, I don't think it would be too strong of a statement to say that I don't know that I would effectively be able to do my job without them. I refer back to them incredibly frequently. And I do understand that it presents some challenge. First of all, it's a lot of work on your part, so I appreciate that. And it also presents a challenge of inserting your judgment around what gets included and what doesn't get included. And I will also kind of acknowledge that a lot of this comes from the fact that you do a very good job at that. You know, at some point in the future, if we had someone that wasn't quite as effective, maybe I would feel differently. But that being said, there's a few things. First of all, I really appreciated the examples of the other city minutes that you included. But in particular, like Inglewood, they use action minutes. I'd like to see the action minutes from the meeting where half the council got up and walked out. I don't know what would have been recorded as part of that, and to really understand what transpired at that meeting. And same thing, a lot of the examples that are included were pretty, there was no discussion, there were no contentious issues. We had an example just recently, there are many, but the one that popped into my mind recently was the use of the trail over, and when I looked back at the PTRC voted unanimously in favor of approving that. But when I went back and read the minutes, that made no sense to me because it was very clear that half the people in that commission were expressing a lot of concerns. And so it was very helpful for me to understand, wait a minute, there's something else going on here. These people actually aren't in favor, and for whatever reason, they don't feel like they can vote that way. So I felt that that was incredibly important information that would have been absolutely lost if all the minutes said were PTRC unanimously voted to approve this. So, but the meeting look at the transcript. So let me get to that. The videos are not searchable. We have the transcript that could potentially be searchable. The meetings go for hours. In order to fully do that, you would have to sit and watch the entire thing over again. And sometimes I read the minutes and then I might go do that. I've come down here to read and listen to the actual audio of the meeting based on what was said in the minutes. But I don't know that I have the ability to re-listen to a 2 or 3 hour meeting just to get the highlights of what was discussed.
Can't you fast forward to the line item in the agenda and it's listed, labeled at the bottom of the?
So not with board and commission meetings because we don't have that in
They're
our
not
open
video.
media contract. Only for city council meetings are they indexed.
Yeah,
Like
that was going to be my next point. But even for the council meetings, you can perhaps go to that line item. But think, for example, of the public roundabout meeting that we had. And that went on for hours. And in order to if you were trying to get, for an example, an understanding, or even in Greenwood Village with their current contentious issue, right? You're trying to get a feeling of all the people who were in the room. Was there kind of more in favor? Was there more opposed? You would have to listen to every single person's comments potentially and see what they were talking about. I also appreciate the effort that you made, to try to show us what action minutes would look like. But I think you've been doing the other style so long. The action minutes wouldn't say Glenn Goldman expressed opposition because blah, 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 blah. They would just say they spoke in opposition. It wouldn't say what their reasoning was. And that, I think, is very important. When people come to city council to make their voices heard, I want to make sure that it's heard. I realize that it takes some staff time. I think that's absolutely worth it. I think videotaping and being transparent that way and making it available that way for people who prefer to do that, I think that's absolutely worth it. I don't think they're exclusive of each other. I think the transcripts are practically useless. So, I don't think that would be helpful. And I do think that there's the other issue is sometimes what is not done is also as important. And if there was no action taken for a particular reason, that would not be recorded. And we have had discussions where we have discussed an issue, we've discussed the pros, we've discussed the cons, and we've decided not to do anything. And all of that discussion would be lost. Unless someone, 10 years down the road wants to come sit through and watch those videos. So I feel very strongly that, and I guess having gone through as many technology iterations as I have in my life, I just envision 30 years from now that these meeting videos are going to have been recorded on Betamax. They're 8-track cassettes that the average person isn't going to have. I have so many zip drives and so many. So I think that, unfortunately, there's no substitute for good old-fashioned paper. I use them a lot, and I would be partial. I think it's worth the investment for us to continue. So.
Councilor Wheel.
Thank you. Thank you. You raised an issue that I hadn't thought about. Maybe you could elaborate a bit. But the legal ramifications of minutes, which are the legal, in the different scenarios, which are the legal minutes? Like, if we had a case pending, and, what's the legal record? Is it?
Do you want to answer that? Or?
I mean, it's not, go ahead.
It's whatever form of minutes is approved by council.
Our minutes have to be in writing, so we can't substitute the video. The video cannot be substituted for the written minutes. We need written minutes.
Okay.
And written minutes have to say what was done, not necessarily what was said, what was done by the council. And then the exception of that is during public hearings, there are more detailed requirements about what needs to be recorded as well.
Well, yeah, you have to, there's usually an audio that gets certified into a transcript that's reviewed by a judge if it goes up on appeal.
So that becomes the official transcript and record, then public hearings is the audio and the video.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I appreciate that. I'm kind of where Katie's at, in that it's kind of the only reason we take them, in a sense, is to be able to retrieve them at some point in the future. And if retrieval is more cumbersome and more awkward, and even if technology didn't advance, of course it will, but even if it didn't, who knows whether we'll still be using Zoom or we'll be using some other supplier. And so I don't sit here with this feeling of certainty that those video records are forever available. So it does feel to me like you do an excellent job of the minutes. I mean, I really am impressed. And I realize it's more work than the action minutes. I do want to wrestle a little bit in my head with this whole legal question, like, are you better off just saying a lot less in an action minute from a legal perspective or not? But if I just think of it from practical perspective, recording and retrieving and all of that, what we do now seems to me to be a lot more useful than skinnying down the recorded minutes and relying on the electronic for the retrieval. So I would vote no change, or would sort of support no change.
Councilor Savabi.
So, I look at sort of my life, and every week I sit probably on 5 or 6 board meetings, and probably about 20 meetings, each 1 to 2 hours long, and every single one goes. They basically go with action minutes. If they don't go with action minutes, we probably have a stack of paper this thick. And for me personally, to be honest with you, I don't go back and. If I'm really curious and I need to go ahead and look at the minutes to see exactly who said what, I go find a way it was recorded on Zoom or whatever, and I find it, and which we have it in this case, we can go. It's not maybe that easy, but at the end of it, for me, do I really care that, Mr. So-and-so said this and Mr. So-and said no? At the end of it, here's that as a team, as a group, what was the vote? What was the verdict? How do we decide to move forward? And it's action minutes, action-driven. And what I've noticed, actually, the companies that have gone through transition from these long minutes to action minutes, the people that in these meetings have the tendency to tell stories and occupy a third or half of these meeting minutes, just for the sake of they like to hear themselves usually talk, they become action-oriented over time. So for me, I'm all in favor of action minutes. I do understand, though, there are some limitations, because if somebody wants to go and really find out who said what, they got to go back and, it takes them a little while to look at it. Let me ask you this, Laura. How much time a week, or how much time do you spend after every council meeting to actually, clean it up and send this to us?
Sure. Councilor Blum asked me this earlier today, so I've been thinking about it. It's a little hard to conceptualize because I'm not just sitting down and working on the minutes for a solid chunk of time. I'm doing other stuff, and just as I have time, I'm working on them. But I was talking with Pamela Broyles, one of our other clerks, and we were trying to figure out about how much time we spend on any given set of minutes. And we estimated between 4 and 8 hours, depending on how involved the meeting was, because we're taking our handwritten notes during the meeting, we transfer that into typed minutes, and then we go back and we listen to the recording to make sure we got everything and what we missed during our handwritten. So it's a process for sure.
So let's go with 8 hours. If you're really going with 8 hours, that's 1 FTE, full-time employee time, after every one of these. How many council meetings do we have a year? 20, 30? What do we have?
We have 22, because we have one in July and one in December.
Right. So out of a 30-day, which the working days are 20 days a month, for an entire month, 1 month a year,
Mayor?
you are doing nothing other than making meeting minutes. So just in case, if one of us wants to go and find out who said what, to not spend that 30 minutes to go and actually find out, go look at the old tape or whatever the recording was. So to me, boy, if you talk about inefficiency, if this was not a city, matter, and this was a company, and you bring this up that you have an employee that they spend the entire month writing meeting minutes, I think they would have want to change it. With that being said, again, I am all in favor of action minutes. I think we should have done this sooner than later. There are pros and cons, but there are more pros than cons. That's the way I see it.
Councilor Blum. You may be on mute. Oh, it's going, but it's just not a voice.
We don't hear you all.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, I respectfully disagree with Akshin about the action minutes. I'm not as technically savvy as Katie is, but I am much older, and doing a little bit of research on some prior tax issues, I found it was very helpful to have the, okay.
Wow.
So, again, there is a delay here. Sorry about that, Laura, but I found it very helpful in determining what the results were and what the intent of the city council at that time. So I found it very helpful to have the minutes. I do tip my hat to you, Laura, because you've done a great job on that. I found it very helpful.
All right. I wonder if we can fix that before the regular meeting. I could just add a few things. I have, to answer some of your questions, I have talked to mayors about it in our mayors' meetings, and they're all action minutes, and they're very, they couldn't imagine not doing them, and it's cost. It's mostly cost, because it does take a long time. They're kind of nice. They're nice to have. I think that the reality is Laura does a lot of work that we don't go back to, right? I mean, so, a lot of that is done. We never look at it again, and it's just a lot of time spent over it. And now that we have a video recording, we really can go back and see it. And I think legally, there's the reasons that people say they vote for something really isn't important. It's really the vote. So that's why the action minutes are there. And you get a lot of discussions in conversations. Even people change their mind during the course of the discussion. So the discussions, what people say really isn't that important legally. It's what the vote is, and you don't look behind the reasons for the vote. And so it's not really that important. But I concede that it is important for, it's nice to go back and say, hey, I can, what did we say there? And Laura's summaries, kind of nice to see. And now you can even go back to the video and do it. The question is just whether it's a cost benefit. Is it really worth that cost? Do we use it that much? I think as Ashton said. So I guess on the whole, I go along with the other mayors and say that really action minutes are the most efficient way to go here and the thing to be done. It's a luxury to have the kind of minutes that Laura supplies.
Did you want to say
Councilor
something?
Brown?
Mike, did you want to say something?
It's interesting, Katie, because you gave the example of the PTRC on that, and that was invaluable in being able to read that because the argument went go, 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 or rather stop, and then at the very end flipped in terms of the actual decision making. That context was really helpful before we sat up here and had that discussion. So, money, to your point, I get it. It's money, it's time, and Laura, you do an outstanding job with it, but all things aside, I think.
Well, we save a lot of money by not paying our city council members anything either. So, I think that again, I understand from a legal's perspective, the only thing that matters is the action that's taken. But I don't think anyone's opinion is unimportant. And when it has been expressed, I'm reminded, I could think of a million examples. I'm reminded of when originally recreational marijuana passed, city council updated our code to reflect it. Time goes by, new council members get elected. There's a discussion about it, and the council didn't understand why the decision had been made the way it was and was about to reverse it. And I was the only person on the council at the time that said, wait a minute, we did it that way on purpose for these 5 reasons. And everyone said, oh, gosh, we hadn't thought of that. History has a habit of repeating itself. And I think that the discussion is important. It doesn't mean you have to do the same thing as the people who went before you. But I think hearing and understanding why they made the decision they made informs our decision and lets us be better decision makers. And I realize from a legal standpoint that doesn't mean anything. But when people show up, otherwise, I wouldn't bother to make any comments at all. I would just vote. I think that's the importance of discussion. That's the importance of citizens coming and giving us their thoughts. And, I realize a lot of it may never see the light of day again, but like I said, I use them very, very frequently.
Mayor, can I just say something?
Sure,
Look, I
Councilor
don't think
Ashton.
it's a question that individual opinion doesn't matter. And it is not the question of boy, we don't care who said what, all we care is the last vote. It's about the mechanism. How much time do we spend in order if somebody wants to go and read the details or look at the details or hear the details? All we're saying here is that rather than spending a city employee's time for a month, a year to prepare it in this format, is that all the input is provided and recorded. And if you want to know what people said exactly or who said what, go look at the recording. Isn't that, by recording, we're not losing anybody's input or the discussion that went on. It's just a different format. Looking at it and listening, spending a little bit of time, maybe half an hour of our time to go and look at it versus spending a city employee's time for a month, a year to have it in this format. That's all we're saying.
I don't want to spend another month of my time doing that either. We don't get paid. And as I've already mentioned, the video is not searchable. So I can read these minutes much more quickly, and I can search them online to find that, and then go watch the video if I want to know exactly what someone said. So again, there are pros and cons, as you pointed out. I personally think the pros of these minutes outweigh the cons. You disagree, which I respect. But that's, when we're talking about efficiency and using people's time, there are 7 of us and any number of citizens who refer back to these minutes. How much time is spent on that? Going back to look through videos, find the right videos, watch the entire 2-hour meeting to get that sense. That's an enormous amount of time as well. And we already ask a lot of our volunteers. So I don't think it's unreasonable to, spend that money as a city.
Counselor Wheel, please.
Thank you. I was going to ask a question about citizenry, because we should consider them in this debate as well. And as Katie points out, do we have any information on how many times members of the community take a look at the minutes, ever access them on the website? Well, we know Earl does, so there's one. But I mean, do we? I know it's not a question. May have to do some homework on that, but it would be interesting to know if it's only the staff and council that use the minutes, or whether there's a bigger issue in the community about having really usable, easy to search minutes.
Does our website track how many people click on to? Do we know that? Click onto the minutes and view the agenda and view the minutes?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that.
Any other questions?
Just as a
Councilor
comment,
Gallagher.
it's interesting, Randy, I've had phone calls from people, and the conversation starts with, I was reading the minutes at the last meeting, and off they go. So it's
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe looking at page hits on the website might give us an idea if it's, once in a blue moon, or if it's fairly frequent or what. I have no feel for it.
City Manager, do you have something, comment?
Before we left, I just wanted to make sure that we understood what our direction was. I'm not necessarily hearing a consensus. I am hearing a request for some additional information. Would it be council's pleasure that we try and do some research on page hits and YouTube views and bring that information back, or what is?
I think that's exactly right.
I don't feel that's necessary, but I hear more consensus than that, but I don't know.
I'm hearing no consensus to make a change. So I
Yeah,
think.
if I could just throw one more thing in here, I think after listening to the rest of the testimony from the rest of council, the mayor, and staff, I'm probably leaning more towards staying status quo and keeping them, because the arguments that I'm hearing Katie make, Randy's touched on some of it. I do go back to them, and if there was a way to cherry pick and say we can do some of them in action and some of them not, those that were easy for us to go find on a tab on a video and say, oh, let's go straight to the issue about the trail easement and get right there, and within a minute or two, I've actually honed into the clip that I'm wanting to watch. But I don't know how we do that. If I want to go back and read about what Planning Commission or PTRC said about something, that becomes harder if it's just a function of hitting play and waiting for it to get there, and fast forwarding and then rewinding and fast forwarding and rewinding until you get to the right spot. So with all that, I'm not saying that my swaying decision here is going to make any real change here, but I would probably now, if we were forced to vote, which I know we're not, but if we were, I'd probably say to stay status quo. And I do like the argument that if we're really boiling it down to time and value and whose time is valuable, I appreciate that staff's time is valuable. Ours is too, and if it is going to cause us more time to be researching some of these issues, when it's something that our staff has been doing at least since I've been here, I guess I'm convinced to probably leave it the same.
Yeah, I think that you've got a kind of a sense of the kind of.
Sounds good.
If some council member wants to bring a motion, they can later on, not now. But I would say, just to add, that we are kind of a victim of our own success here, because we don't have long meetings. I mean, if we were like Lakewood or a bigger city, it would be impossible to do what Laura's doing. right? The only way we can do it is because we have short, abbreviated meetings. So, that's, keep that in mind. So it is, that's a part of the balance, so.
I'll be sure to
And
remind council of that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, thank you for a short meeting.
As we get to the 8 o'clock hour, I'll remind everybody
Thank you
about
very much.
valuing Laura's time.
Laura can stand up and say, this is enough. I've had enough. Okay, if we're ready, the council pleasure, if we move on to the next item on the agenda, on the
And,
discussion, study
Actually, I
session.
wanted to ask, since we are having the lag with Zoom and Al has disappeared, we were going to try to restart Zoom to see if that improves the connection, and we could do that now.
Okay, you want us to
or-
wait now for you start?
Just so we definitely have it ready for the regular meeting, if that's all right. He left before
I'm texting her.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Laura. This is Emily.
Hey, Emily, I hear you. Can you respond again, please?
Just for council's benefit, we've been having some internet challenges here at City Hall, both last week.
Laura, there's about a full minute delay.
Yeah. Last week and this week both, we've had intermittent times of our external outbound emails going out. You may have seen my weekly updates to you on Friday extremely late. That was because we couldn't send anything out. Every time I'd send it out, it would bounce back. So, and that happened again yesterday. People weren't able to access our web-based software. So it's been a challenge the last 3 days. So. Yeah.
Emily, is that you?
Hi, Laura. This is Emily.
Hey. All right, how's the delay now?
Yes, it is.
Oh, still really bad. The delay is still really bad, apparently.
It's terrible. It's the same.
Yeah, she just called in. Okay.
How about I have a free conference call ID number that we can send out to all those who are trying, are trying to get in right now, and they just call it. I don't think it'll go through there, but you can certainly do it like that.
Will they be able to hear us?
They probably will be able to hear us if we're piped in through our microphones like this when we speak. Alice gave the message saying the meeting hasn't started yet. I'm going to say try calling.
Emily's on it, so I don't know why I can't have that. Is he trying the, I want to make sure it's the regular meeting, not the executive session. There's two different things going on.
Okay. You want me to try that now, even though Emily's not working? Sure.
Hey, Laura, it's Lucinda. Did you just call me?
Hi, Lucinda. No, I didn't call you, but I did put in chat that we're just having some trouble with the audio. It's very delayed right now. Can you respond and see if you heard that?
Okay, because I just got a call from.
That was Chris calling you.
Yes, I did. Did you hear me?
Lucinda, I'm going to respond to you in chat because the audio is very delayed.
Okay, does Chris need to speak to me? Okay.
I have a question for the city attorney then. Or maybe Laura. Can we push off this study session on number 2 on the study session until for another day? So let you work on
Table
this.
it.
Let's do that. Then let's take a break and come back at 6:30 and hope that we can get our Zoom up. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back at 6:30.